Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. While people come in, we'll just kind of talk through the title really quickly. You've joined us for The Secret to Creating an ABM Strategy Your VIP Buyers and Sales Team Will Love. So we will give it just a few more seconds while people are coming in, and then I will go ahead and introduce myself here. My name is Mary Foster. I am the Director of Marketing for Ambition, and Ambition is a sales gamification and coaching platform. So we enable revenue-facing teams to motivate, encourage, engage remote and in-office sales teams. And joining me today is Sam Boyd from Drift, so I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey, everybody. My name is Sam. Pleasure to be here. I am one of the directors of sales over at Drift, which is the leading revenue acceleration platform in the market, and really spend a lot of time focusing on making sure we can provide the best buying experience for users across plenty of different industries. So looking forward to speaking more detail about that.
Great. So today's agenda, what we're going to talk about and cover is why ABM has to be a team sport. So I think we have a good mix from both sides of the aisle here. We've got sales and marketing represented. We'll talk about defining ICP and priority accounts. So kind of how you go about creating those target lists to build an ABM program. And then we're going to talk about delivering VIP experiences in a digital first world. So kind of there's still no in-person events happening really, and how can you leverage digital experiences. Then we're going to also share, I brought some campaigns from my team to share that you can copy and use for yourself. And then we'll talk about also the importance of follow-up. So setting sales up for success after these VIP events or digital experiences, and then how to scale that with AI and automation. So big agenda, and I think we can go ahead and get started.
Perfect.
All right. So why ABM has to be a team sport? This is really just, talking about how for years, marketers have been obsessed with casting these wide nets. So all the marketing goals used to be volume based. How many visits to your site? How many leads? The quantity. And can you talk about why sales hated that approach, Sam?
Yeah, unfortunately, the truth is we really did. And I think I can recall back to times where I was an individual contributor to managing teams where, working with some amazing marketing teams, but getting lists and getting, thousands of names coming through the funnel where it was a bit lower intent and wasn't overly personalized. And the issue with that is it became deprioritized for sales. And it was something that was didn't yield the results typically that you were looking for, and ultimately took a lot of touches in order to get any sort of movement there. And I think about it not only from a sales perspective, but also, from a buyer perspective. You don't want to just be treated like any other buyer when you're coming through a funnel and looking at a product and kind of getting these generic touches or outreaches from a team. It's really a lot more about how personalized it can get for both sides of the house.
Yeah, for sure. And so that's sort of, where account-based marketing, account-based engagement came in, because I think the strategy started to shift towards, what if we focused on quality? And how do you do that? How do you focus on quality, not quantity? And it's really setting out like, well, these are the people we want. It's sales saying like, these are the types of leads we want. These are who we want to go after. But it's not just marketing going to get those too. There's like an outbound sales component. Then you have your CS team trying to expand some of these target customers. It really does sit across both sides, I think.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things for sales is we're looking for people to take action, and we're looking for people to find that wow or aha moment that is so personalized to them that they're willing to engage in conversation. So ultimately, it's really focused on the persona base that's there, and making sure that we're enabling people to get to a point where they want to take action. Yes. So if you think about your ABM squad a bit, Mary, I'll let you go over this, but it's really changed over the time.
Yeah. So, up top, align multiple departments around ABM campaigns to improve and reach impact. So, I love the little image we've got here to show because there is a field marketer component, which shout out to all the field marketers that had to figure out how to go from the field to the digital landscape. And then the outbound reps who sometimes sit on marketing and sometimes they sit under sales. Then you've got demand gen, digital marketing, content. And then what I think this really shows is how important it is to have kind of someone running point, whether that's a head of ABM or just someone running point who sits across both teams and can really act as a liaison to um, run a cohesive campaign experience. And out of curiosity, where do your SDRs report in your org, Sam?
Yeah, so at Drift, the SDR actually report into the sales team, but it's interesting. We've had it on both sides before, where they've previously reported into marketing, because it is so important to make sure that the SDR, the outbound team, is focusing on continuing the messaging that's coming from the marketing team or anybody that's working on demand generation or account-based marketing. And ultimately, they're on the front lines a lot and able to provide a lot of feedback into the team as to how things are going and how people are reacting to those campaigns.
Yeah, we have a weekly sync with our SDRs also sit under sales. They report up into the sales org, but we have a weekly meeting with marketing and sales that didn't used to happen until kind of we decided that we were going to really embrace ABM. And it was around, follow-up communications, how we're going to outreach, cadences, messaging, all that stuff. And so I think this accurately kind of depicts what it looks like when you want to launch ABM at your org.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it previously, but it really spans across so many different departments to run a successful ABM campaign, even to the CS team who's providing feedback to the customers or from the customers about potential opportunities or making sure you continue to delight your customers once they are already on board.
Yeah. And I
So
think people who do this, they sometimes call it a pod or a squad, but especially if you are running pilots or proof of concept, you definitely want to have CS representation in your ABM group.
yeah. One of the things that's so important that I think about and think about a lot of the time we've spent with our marketing team when we engage maybe on an annual basis, redefining our ICP or the accounts we want to go after, is doing that, is defining what our ideal customer profile looks like. And this is a team sport as well, because we're working with our operations team, we're working with our marketing team, with our demand gen team, we're working with the sales organization, the SDR team, to understand what our best accounts look like, and put together the criteria, or even a bit more about what personas do we want to go after, what industries do we think we're the best fit for, and really coming to align around how we want to prioritize the accounts that we're looking to go after. So at Drift, one of the ways that we think about it is we kind of have these three tiers that we get to. First and foremost, you think about our total addressable market, and everything there is kind of encompassed into that volume account realm. So, it can be a good fit, potential value that we can provide, potential use case for the actual prospect or the organization. But as we go closer and closer to the center, it becomes a lot more targeted with the campaigns that our team is running and even the messaging our sales team is using. So when we think about target accounts, those are really the accounts we think about that might be in the B2B realm for us, or accounts that we see the majority of our business is coming from, or the majority of our customers are finding the most value. But then we think about even a subset of those, which are our white glove accounts. And these are the accounts we really are targeting specifically, because we know if we're able to create that moment of engagement for the sales org or for marketing to have a one-on-one moment with this prospect, we know we can not only have a huge value prop to bring forward to them, but also provide a ton of value to the customer if we are able to convert them. So really, it's all about aligning who we want to target, making sure we have the different departments on the same page, but then providing those experiences depending on where a potential prospect fits. So I think, Mary, it'd be great to talk a little bit about how you actually prioritize and choose your target accounts that your team goes after.
Yeah. So for us, and I think everyone does this differently. Some people have maybe only one or two what they call tier one accounts in that very center of that image Sam showed, depending on your sales cycle and things like that. But for us, what we did to find our ICP, to pick our targets, is we analyzed our current customer base. So we pulled all of our customers by who was low churn, great expansion, great health. And we put all of our best customers into verticals and different market segments as they related to size, and said, okay, here are our best fits when it comes to these verticals and these sizes. These are the customers we want to go after in terms of vertical and size. And then identifying accounts can be tricky. People will just kind of skip ahead to the step of like, oh, well, you have your target account list and you go after them. I don't see a ton of resources out there about how people build the target account list. And so I did want to touch on that a little bit. Once we were able to identify the verticals and the sizes, there are tools out there that will help you build lookalike audiences. So you could use, a tool to do it. If your CRM is already loaded with possibilities, if your marketing team's more mature and they've been like doing field marketing and events and, loading everything into the CRM, you may already have them there and then can do a query. And then there's also intent data that can be helpful, whether that's, from another tool like Bombora or G2 or whoever you want to use. That's another way that you can help identify target accounts once you've identified the ICP. And then the way you prioritize from there, or the way we prioritize, is a little bit closer to like, who's our best shot of these? We want this kind of customer who's a little bit warm, who's showing intent, who is going through digital transformation and hiring. And so that is how we looked at creating the targets. And, just tactically, some other questions that I think don't get answered a ton is, how often do you refresh your list? Do you rebuild it all the time? Is this your list forever until you set, for us, we do refresh our list quarterly. And we have a certain amount of targets per outbound rep that then marketing supports. But it's a quarterly effort, and we're still sticking within the ICP, but refreshing it with new accounts.
Yeah, you talk about doing that quarterly. I guess one of my questions would be is, how often do you revisit actually what falls under your ICP, or actually how you define ICP? Is that an exercise you go through as well?
Yes, it's something quarterly as well, because something that, is very interesting. And again, this team sport concept is, we started seeing a totally new persona enter our buying committee when COVID happened. And it's really like the CIO, so the the technical person. We didn't really used to consider that a target persona in the buying committee. They never really showed up in deals. But I think the way people were transitioning so quickly to remote tools and a digital tool stack, and things needed to integrate, that was like one thing that really came up for us, is like, hey, this is a new target persona inside these accounts. And so we do review that quarterly as well, because there's also changes in sales enablement and operations and who owns what. So for us, it is part of the quarterly discussion.
Yeah, I love that. And we've gone through that as well. I think probably almost everybody has, is over the course of the last year as things have shifted. Personally, we've seen larger organizations looking into how they make this transformation, because where they might have been dependent on a major event or two every year, or, doing these virtual webinars or virtual events is something very new to them, and they're looking to make that transition. The other thing that I think about is, as our product has actually changed, we've redefined some of the personas that fall into our ICP, as our offering is really become is fallen between these sales and marketing departments. We're in a unique position where sales has become, in sales leadership, all the way up to the CROs of organizations, have become very active in not only the actual evaluation stage of looking at drift, but actually, being part of some of the conversations, whether it's monthly business reviews or quarterly business reviews, because the impact that we're able to have. And I think that's been an interesting shift for us as well.
Yeah, and I got a really great question here from Scott who wanted to ask, do all reps have a certain number of each type of campaign, or how do they balance their time between those three layers? And I'm assuming the three layers are kind of the one-to-one, those very center white glove accounts, and then outside of that. And so how does your team, particularly I guess on the outbound side, do you have dedicated reps to those white glove accounts and then other reps running the other campaigns, Sam? Or how do you guys approach your different tiered accounts?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what we do is, um, not to say that there's ownership of the accounts completely between departments, but when I think about the volume accounts that are out there, the marketing department really owns the majority of the time working into those accounts, keeping, whether it's nurturing them or creating more actionable moments that might, um, you know, qualify them a bit further into, whether it's a conversation or connecting with the team. But then the outbound team, they're really a mix of the target and white glove accounts. So we don't have necessarily a white glove account type team where our target accounts, what we're prioritizing and deeming into falling under the bucket of our ICP. Those are the only accounts that the team is working into, and we're really prioritizing those. And then as we get down to those super targeted, high fit, high value accounts that we would call those the white glove accounts, they're scattered throughout the organization and really prioritized. And part of what we'll talk about a little bit later is how we take a look and how we focus on not only communicating with marketing when it comes to the right messaging that we're using or working, collaborating, accordingly with them when it comes to our outbound or any of our approaches, but also how the internal sales team works into those accounts and prioritizes those accounts, from the SDRs working potentially into certain parts of the organization, and then maybe even some of our account executives working into other parts and using different touches across the board. So it's a bit of a mix, but there is some ownership differences. But ultimately, we are working the majority of them, which are our target and white glove accounts, which would fall into our ICP.
Yeah. And the way we do it, Scott, is we have sort of like enterprise reps who have a far smaller list than the other ones. And so we do separate it out. So we have, the people who are working mid market have a little bit of a bigger list than the people who are assigned onto those white glove accounts.
Yeah,
Cool.
very true. So when we think about our ABM bucket, a lot of it, you define your ICP, you're able to take a look at who you want to target, but then it actually dictates the tactics that both marketing and sales are taking to market in order to contact and reach out to those targets. So when we think about it, there's content syndications, there's obviously paid channels, there's chat, there's certain channels that we'll probably use for pretty much every account that we're working into proactively. But then you think a lot about, those ABM accounts where we want to focus that one-on-one time with thing like customized content where we know the persona, whether it's a VP of demand gen or a CRO of an organization. We want to make sure we're as relevant as possible the entire time, even all the way through to handwritten invites. We've gone as far as send swag to certain personas and certain people at certain organizations, or sending personal notes from our founders asking them to attend an event. There's a lot more that goes into working into those VIP accounts.
Yeah, and we got a great question about this too, of how many touches does it take? What's the average? And I think if anybody knew that exactly, they would just could just be rich, couldn't they? But the way we think about it, and that question came from Johnny, is at least from the marketing side, and I'll let Sam speak to the sales side. On the marketing side, I don't know that we have an average, but we do know a good mix. And so it's kind of represented here where we want to make sure there are highly tailored webinars that we market along with other content, because we're trying to grow our buying committee contacts and like really just deepen into the account where everyone that works at that business has heard of Ambition. And then reps on the outbound side for us work those quarterly. And then they have, I do think they have a target number of touches before they consider it exhausted, and it may be recycled on every other quarter. So when something is exhausted from the outbound side, they're just getting no responses, no email opens, no site visits, nothing to indicate that it's working, then we have to go back and really look at like, who are the contacts? Is the persona wrong for that account? Maybe they structure their org differently, things like that. So again, that's part of, for us, a quarterly conversation rather than a number of touches.
Yeah, it's tough. Not to reiterate what you said. There's no magic answer for the number of touches, but I actually think about. I wouldn't want to say exhausting the account, because I don't think you ever really have, especially potentially if it's a real target account. But a lot of times, I actually think about the not only the attempts and the volume, but the actual channels that you're using. And so, from an outbound perspective, whether it's an SDR team or your sales team that's really trying to work into the account, it's making sure that you utilize everything that you have in front of you and creating the best experience across all those channels. So whether it is email, trying to keep it as personalized as possible, whether it's sending them personal videos, whether it's connecting on LinkedIn, whether it's the occasional call maybe, or inviting them to events, or even sending them social proof. I think you can find a healthy blend of channels and contacts that will probably keep you busy for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. And one more question before I know we have to move on is around attribution models. So how do you weigh different touch points or for an opportunity, one from ABM campaign? So real quick, I'll share how we do it, and then Sam, you can say how you guys do it, which may or may not be the same. So we look at a team approach. So if you're checking inbound versus outbound, we do measure and track those. I think every organization wants to talk about acquisition cost and funnel it, but collectively we set goals as a team pipeline is what we like to call ourselves. And so whether it be inbound or outbound, we have one team collective goal for pipeline generation. And then we do a blended first and last touch approach. So maybe the first touch was a webinar and the last touch was on the outbound side with a rep. It would fall under technically inbound, but we also do give credit to the last touch too for outbound. So it's more of a team goal. That's how we do it.
Yeah, we're pretty similar. I mean, we certainly have a first touch attribution model, a last touch. We actually flag our target accounts within our CRM, and then even it's a team sport for us across the board, and that's not even just in sales at Drift. It's with marketing, with product, with the SDR org, with the CS org. I mean, we're utilizing everybody within the organization in order to hopefully work our way into an account or create that moment of engagement. So it can be difficult to actually attribute it directly to an individual when there's so many people engaged across so many different channels. Ultimately, where we all align across the organization is around a pipeline number, and especially when it comes to some of these target accounts. The goal is creating an opportunity where we might have something that we can bring value to that customer, and we align around that in order to measure and kind of avoid some of the messy middle when it comes to who directly gets that that meeting attributed to them or that pipeline attributed to them.
Cool. All
So,
right. Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Oh, I was gonna say, when we think about this VIP experience in this digital first world, there is so much that's changed. I mean, we're all on a webinar here today, and certainly webinars aren't something new. But ultimately, what I think 2020 forced a lot of companies to rethink was how they create these special moments, or how they are creating these very personalized type events where you're able to take that list of target customers or your ABM or your target personas and accounts and actually work into them in order to create that experience that will never completely replace something that's potentially in person, but creates that moment that enables the engagement into those accounts. So when we think about it, I think the majority of us are probably sitting at home right now. I know, I'm not sure our cameras are on today, but I'm in my renovated home office gym that's not exactly the world's largest thing, and in comparison to our office is certainly a lot smaller, but we're all online. And I think one of the big kind of questions a lot of people had going into this was specifically focused around the enterprise, and thinking that, listen, enterprise deals can only be won when you get on a plane, or enterprise events, or creating those moments like some of those big conferences maybe some of you have been to. How is the kind of marketing or sales world going to continue on with enterprise if you're unable to do those things? And it's been a challenge, but I think it's been a wonderful experience to try to create these moments for brands and for companies as we move forward, and we'll share some of those experiences. But ultimately, it is that experience between your brand and what you're able to do It's so important now because that face-to-face work, the face-to-face time with, the people you're looking to speak to, unfortunately, isn't there right now.
Yeah, for sure. Where it says brand experience is a virtual experience now for us. I love to think that one of the biggest strengths of our brand was actually our people and interacting with our people face to face, and like our customer summit and ambition is made up of a lot of great people. And now you can't really, you're interacting with them behind a screen or going website first instead of having a great interaction at a conference or something like that. And Marcy actually asked a great question around, how do I even know now where to send something? Like, am I supposed to ask for people's home address? Which we will talk about that more, Marcy, on the event session. I'll tell you how we do it, but it's changed a lot of things. Yeah, the tactics and venue shift. So
Yeah, but one of the major challenges with that, right, Mary, is so many people are doing a lot of the same things. So how do you actually stand out from the crowd? We talked about, I remember probably just about a year ago, maybe a little less, we were looking at Google Trends for some of the terms like virtual events and webinars, and they were through the roof because this is naturally where people go. But then you talk about, what is it that actually makes a phenomenal ABM campaign that gets people engaged?
yeah. So I love the bulleted list here. Highly personalized to the contacts under an account. When you go to an ABM model, it can be scary to lose volume and not get that big wide net anymore that you've been so used to showing, like in the board meetings of look at how we're growing traffic. But what you are able to do is really, really personalize to the contacts. And because you've gone through that work of like, who are the personas? Um, what do we want to talk about to them? And again, from marketing and sales, this is why a united front is important. So focusing on the buyer's pain points, we get that a lot from sales. One specific example for us was on demos. Our product, it does motivate and encourage people, but that used to be considered a softer secondary thing people buy for. They wanted really to talk about performance improvement and increasing conversions and coaching. But now all of a sudden, with people moving remote and empathy being a theme that we hear over and over, it was sales who first said like, hey, people really, really, really care about motivation again. They want to talk about boosting morale. And so you are able to tailor these campaigns to specific pain points that you hear on a discovery call like that in your retargeting and things like that. That's been
Yeah.
really special.
And it's so important, I think, when you talk about a lot of those things, in order to kind of put yourself in the center or potentially in the buyer's shoes and think about, what is important to them, or what trends are coming your way. You think about, the example you gave around motivation being so important to people as many sales orgs were moving to work from home. It's kind of shifting your perspective a little bit, and then being able to take action on those thoughts and the pain that potentially people are having. And at the end of the day, the number one thing that we're looking to do, especially between marketing and sales, is create that moment where somebody's willing to have a conversation about something, the product that you offer, the problem that you solve, or the problem maybe they have. Whatever the response is, ultimately, that's what we're looking for, because we know that if we have trained teams and if we have top line marketers and top line sales teams, that the hardest part is actually getting somebody to get on and talk to that team. So whatever we can do that's super specific into the personas that we're going after, to enable them to take action and actually start that conversation, these are the most important things in my eyes.
Yeah. And Kevin asked a really great question here, because of this team sport and team effort, and difficulty with attribution, how do you write a comp plan? It's a great question. So I'll share really quickly how we comp our team, Kevin. And it's, I think everyone does it differently. So whatever works best. But for us, we don't care if the demo request came through the website, like through our chat or through a form, or if the SDR got it on their call. If an SDR has worked an account within the last 60 days, and we're able to get a meeting set through any channel, they get credit on the meeting. We do have an inbound rep who also works non-target accounts or unowned things that come inbound, and he's also comped on meetings. So I don't know if there's anything for you to share, Sam, about how you guys do it, but for us, that was really important, that we don't care if it comes inbound. We don't care if you got it outbound. If you have been putting forth an effort on the account, like we know it makes a difference. It's hard to measure, but we know that it matters. And so we comp on meeting set.
Yeah, we're very similar. And so, speaking about any outbound teams, it's talking about, we look at, I believe right now it's a last 30-day touch model where if they're working the account and if they're working it in tandem with their AE or they're working it and owning it and prospecting throughout the organization, we're going to comp them on that. And then ultimately we do loop in pipeline into that as well too, because it's super important. And that's something that's carried throughout the organization is that, it's funny, we talked about where do most SDR, BDR teams, report into, and it's interesting. Some are into sales, some into marketing, and I've seen both. But really, there where the rubber hits the road, a lot of the work that marketing is doing is then getting into the sales development organization, and we're all meeting in the center around a unified goal of pipeline.
Agree. Yeah, we share a goal with outbound and inbound. We're team pipeline, and that's our target. We share a scorecard.
Yeah, I think that's great having a unified team for it as well too. It creates a better experience across the board. So, but getting back to digital experiences, maybe Mary, why don't you take us through or talk about kind of how you've leveled up some of your experiences or what your team has been focusing on?
Yeah. So the cool thing about digital experiences is you can get people from all over the place to show up. So we have something called happy hour at home. And it was mentioned earlier, like you can't really do founder dinners anymore. That used to be a big thing for us with big enterprise accounts. That can't really happen right now. So we started doing something called happy hour at home, and we changed it up a little bit where we didn't have anyone from ambition sales on the calls. We didn't record them, record the conversations from marketing to use later, which all the marketing folks out there probably know how painful that is. But we really wanted to be in service. We've got to do something that's like in service to our most high priority enterprise accounts. And so happy hour at home is a mix of prospects who we have opportunities with. They might be in a pilot, they might be in a POC, they might just be talking to someone. It's also customers, so some of our VIP enterprise customers, and then also people that we want to engage, that we want to get a meeting set with. And so this most recent one we had yesterday was sales enablement focused. So we had sales enablement leaders on the call, and no one from Ambition came to talk about Ambition or what we could do to help or be a solution. We just wanted enablement people to get together and talk about challenges and solutions. And, one of the nicest things is that your customers usually do show up and start selling for you. They say like, hey, here's how we solved it with Ambition, or hey, here's a tool that is not Ambition, but something we use that you might find helpful. It's people really just coming together. And we have found it to be unbelievable for pipeline acceleration, for expansion, for renewal, basically across the entire funnel. These have been so powerful. And so to Marcy's question earlier about like, what do you do? How do you get people's home address? It was tricky. There's also rules when you're shipping alcohol across the globe. So there's that aspect too, but there's services out there who can do it through Postal, Sendoso. There's different gifting services you could run it through. For us, it is very manual, but like creating that relationship where we have the AE or the CSM reaching out, being like, hey, where can we send you a gift? Where would you like it to be delivered? Oftentimes it is going to be their home address these days.
Yeah, I love that. And we've actually done something pretty similar recently. And it's something we actually do very frequently as well. It's really focused around, our customer network and taking these ICP customers that we talked about earlier, these customers that fit the, firmographic information, that fit the type of organizations, whether it's they're selling like a B2B model or they have sales teams that look like this, and maybe kind of, cohorting them a little bit, but then, bringing them together and focusing on, talking about how people are using the product and getting them together just to have conversations. And it's great because the feedback we've gotten is that when you bring together, whether it's, VPs of marketing or CMOs all together onto a call, the only thing they have in common, aside from their job title maybe right now, is that they're working with us. And so enabling them to share tips and tricks and enabling them to talk to each other. And we've even gone as far to create breakout opportunities where, using Zoom, you can randomly match people up and allow them to open up and talk about, hey, what are you doing? What are you prioritizing? How are you using Drift in order to improve that, and enabling them to get ideas. Now, one of the favorite parts of it is we've done wine tasting as well, and bringing a sommelier on, or a vineyard owner, and having them talk about the wine, which is certainly fun. So everybody has something in common to bring them in and kind of get them going a bit. But it's created, our customers have become even more successful, which is huge for us, and even more outspoken about the success that they've had with us, which I think, is, from a sales perspective, I want to be in that meeting. I want to be in that event, and be able to talk about Drift. Maybe there's more things they could be using, or maybe being able to bring in prospects to that specific event. But really, it's so natural flowing, and enables us to use our successful customers in the future for, whether it's case studies, whether it's referral calls, whether they end up expanding out maybe into different regions. The value is immense across the board.
Yeah. One really funny thing, a byproduct of these events, because we don't record them, we're true to our word. Everyone in the org is now like dying to get an invitation to one of these because of the few people who are on them, or everyone will share like the LinkedIn praise of like, thank you so much. What an amazing event. But very few people at Ambition have actually experienced it, even though we put it on. I think everyone from sales, marketing, CS are like trying to figure out how to sneak on to the events, which must
Well,
mean it's good.
maybe I'll invite you to one of ours upcoming, and I can go to one of yours, and then we can share notes.
Let's do it.
Perfect. Yeah, do you want to talk about, I know you have a campaign strategy here that it'd be a good one to go through, and maybe people can replicate. Do you want to take us through this?
Yeah, so I'll walk you through what we do, being newish to ABM and how we got started. And it's more tactical than maybe a lot of webinars talk about, but that's just sort of how I think. And it goes back to things like, but how do you build the list? But how do you grow the contacts? How do you do it? So this is kind of how we do it. We did start with a verticalized approach. And the reason why was because we were able to cohort our ICP customers that way. We were able to identify 4 specific verticals that we felt like we are a perfect solution for. And so it's everything from tailoring your demo sandbox environments to those verticals, like having it built out with their metrics, their nomenclature, their culture, really a lot of shared culture inside these certain verticals. Then we were able to do industry content on the marketing side. So to serve as both enablement and downloadable content. It was very easy for our entire team to know that we were going to do case studies inside these specific verticals. We were going to produce guides, tailored content for these specific verticals. We were able to do research on what those industries, like how they grow, how they think, what tool stack they use. It just allowed us to do the thing that everyone talks about, is getting very personal. But doing it inside verticals made it a little less scary on the volume side. There were still a good number of accounts we could target. We felt like it was somewhat of a volume play, kind of that one to many, if you remember back to Sam's image. And then we also, once we did that, we were able to do some cool things like custom web copy through free tools like Google Optimize. And we used a combination of Drift to with analytics to create these custom audiences that we can retarget to. And so vertical is very important to us. A big part of the mission on the marketing side is to grow the contacts. Again, the outbound team has contacts that they are working, and on the marketing side, we want to support that by growing even outside of that. So, do all the AEs already know about us? Let's get a guide for how AEs can sell better at a logistics firm or whatever it is. We want every person in the org to know about us. So we target those accounts on LinkedIn with downloadable content and things so that we can really grow our target account audience and build out the buying committee. We also do those persona events that I mentioned. So it's interesting because you could do it by vertical, but then the sales team was like, well, if we host these quarterly and we do this vertical, it might be three quarters from now before we get to the vertical they really care about. So we do a mix of vertical and persona. And then what I really want to talk about is SDR best friend. So it goes back to like what people are talking about, attribution or who gets credit. and us really taking that team approach. So we wanted to make it feel like the SDR is everywhere. So the SDR is doing cold outreach. They're emailing, they're calling. When any of those people come to the website, we use Drift to do this, but we don't want it to be the Drift bot. We want it to be their SDR. So they'll see, this is Matt Wright. He's on Team Pipeline. Shout out to him. So Matt will be calling or emailing when one of his accounts lands on the site. They see his picture and a little notification that says, hey, it's me, Matt. Let me know if you have questions. And then you can see here, that's not really Matt typing that. Matt does not have to be on the website proactively chatting every single one of his accounts. But you can see this person, Ed, responded and said, hey, no, I received your email and I'm doing some research. So we're able to make it feel like Matt is talking to Ed everywhere. So he got the call, he got the chat, he's going to get a gift from Matt. Then we will, on the marketing side, when we target Ed in a nurture campaign, we segment it out by SDR so that the demo link is Matt's calendar. So he's going to see Matt every single place that he engages with our brand. And it's worked great. And so whether it comes through inbound or outbound, it feels like it came from Matt. And that is what I think makes it so personalized and great for the buyer.
I think that's amazing. I mean, and when Ed gets on a call with Matt, it's going to feel like he already knows him so well. It'll be the experience from, awareness all the way through to actually taking action and getting hopefully on a call with Matt and the team. It's just so personalized across the board. It's going to create a real white glove experience for them.
Yeah. And then let me see, there was a quick question. Let's see. Does your SDR serve in this role for all accounts, including high target? Or does an account executive level person own the account? So for us, Kevin, the SDR owns the account until the meeting has happened. So once the account executive runs the demo, they are now the owner of the account and they work it from there. So to your point, Ed will have to say goodbye to Matt once he gets further down in the sales cycle. And the account executive then owns the account at that point.
Yeah, we're the exact same way.
And I had one more question about what do you mean by custom web landers? Sorry, that is marketing talk. So custom web pages. We're able to use Google Optimize with dynamic tags on our web pages. So if you come from a software space and you land on the page, you might see all the copy about software. If you are from finance, banking, something like that, the copy dynamically updates to be about banking industry and those metrics. And we're able to know what that copy is supposed to be and what those metrics are because we only are serving those 4 verticals. Really, we can get more custom. And the way we power that is through Google Optimize. It's free. We do it in tandem with Drift, though. That's how we cookie our audiences through Drift, really. All right, so now on to follow up. Let's see. Oh, this is our slide. So one thing that I really, really wanted to call out was for us, we have tried ABM in the past. Because it is a team sport, it does not work if marketing is in and sales is not, or if sales is in and marketing is not. So for us, coaching around target account metrics has been the game changer. So this is a screenshot from our own platform that we use. It dynamically inputs data around how you're working your target account. So, hey, Matt, how do you feel about your one target account meeting this month? Or, hey, your 18 connects in with target accounts. How do you feel? That is a weekly coaching cadence that does dynamically update. And we also track these metrics because of our own product. We use our own product to display all target account calls, target account meetings. They fire into Slack when we get a meeting set. So on the marketing side, we're all able to see like, oh my gosh, Matt's account just got set. Carolina, they came from the email you sent. Great job. Jamie, they were at the wine event. So the visibility and the coaching is what really has allowed it to stick for us. And I think just alignment doesn't really get enough praise in the ABM execution
Yeah.
strategy.
It's crucial across the board. And so, and when I think about that, I think about how closely we actually work with our marketing team to not only help, have influence over the campaigns that they're running and provide feedback, but really when it comes to the follow-up messaging and strategy that we bring to the table moving forward. We are incredibly spoiled at Drift, I will say, from a sales perspective, where our marketing team is phenomenal, and they a lot of times are spoon feeding us some amazing information, and even sometimes putting together very tailored and very detailed messaging that we're able to give the sales team or the outbound team to allow them to follow up and work as efficiently as possible. So you can see here, we actually have shout out to Matilda, who's amazing on our team, but oftentimes we'll send a video over afterwards, sometimes explaining the event to make sure that everybody's aware what the events were. So you can see here, we had two Ascend events in February. One was hosted by Commvault and one was hosted by Adobe, both great customers of ours, focusing on different areas. So whether it's the East and the Southeast or the West and the Midwest, but facilitating those conversations between, I believe these were even some of our high value prospects and enabling them to talk to, great companies like these. So whatever marketing can do and to help with these strategies is always greatly appreciated, and really ensures that the experience doesn't stop at the event or the action. So um, the other thing that is incredibly important, I will say from a sales perspective, and again, we are so lucky that we get oftentimes, daily or weekly reminders from our team about upcoming events or how registration is coming, asking for help sometimes, but making sure that the plans and the dates are clearly communicated, because there is nothing worse than having a target account go to an amazing event and then having a pretty top of the funnel sequence or messaging go out to them. That's the type of experience you want to avoid. So making sure we're all aligned on the dates, the plan, and how we're moving forward accordingly. And then to the sales managers out there and the sales teams, making sure that you're reinforcing the messaging, but making sure that you realize all the work that's gone into getting these companies or these personas to attend this event or attend a conversation or take an action, and making sure that we have the right plays in place. You never want to be using something generic. We want to be as specific and significant as possible. And we want to make sure that the white glove treatment, that we use that term a lot, that marketing or the ABM team has rolled out. We want to make sure that treatment continues all the way through, not only through maybe a discovery phase and a demonstration phase, but hopefully when they get to the actual become a customer as well. So that's how we think about carrying on, and how sales comes in to try to pick up and carry the load with marketing once these events have taken place. But one of the things that we talk about, especially in this global economy, and Mary talked about it, how one of the great things about some of the events is you can invite people from all over. You're no longer restricted based on a geographic location, and so you think about that, but you also think outside of the 9 to 5 kind of time frame that people are working. And then we talk a lot about how we can utilize AI and automation in order to become sales best friend, and allow them to not only focus, obviously let them sleep a little bit, but be there at all times, because as our target personas and our high value customers are located all over the world. And now that our office for most of us is actually at our home. So, for a lot of us, maybe we don't have that 9 to 5 anymore because we're, dealing with kids' schedules, or we're logging in early and then maybe working a little bit late. You never know when you're going to get the opportunity to actually engage with that target persona. And so we talk about the fact that buyers are always on, and you can't control that part. So one of the great things we've done is we've worked on developing the Drift virtual selling assistant, because if you think about it, your team puts forward all this work in order to bring these target accounts into the site, and we want to make sure they have the best experience no matter when it is. Maybe they're on a flight, maybe they're up at 2 a.m. and they're just thinking about a problem they have. We want to be able to give them this experience 24/7, and ultimately expand the bandwidth of your sales team, because sales teams have to sleep, marketing teams have to sleep, everybody has to sleep. But making sure that you can provide that best experience at any given time and utilizing automation and AI to cover them has been a huge benefit. Because for sales in working through a selling assistant like this, you think about what we talked about in the earlier stages is moving from this casting the net perspective to this very targeted approach. The last thing we want to do is be adding a repetitive task onto a salesperson's plate and giving them notifications all the time that they're zoning out on, or creating too much noise that doesn't allow them to get through some of the day-to-days that they have. We want to make sure that it's really just a high value alerts that are coming through that they're able to take action on, or action is taken for them while they're not there. So we think about making sure that we're always available to help our buyers get what they need, whether that's information about a plan or about how pricing works, or if it's actually setting up a time to connect with the sales team. There's a lot that we can do here to make sure that coverage is there 24/7.
Yeah.
So
And I think one thing too that stands out to me as someone who utilizes Drift is, imagine doing all this work of these hyper personalized ads and this hyper personalized outreach. And then you finally get that person to come to the site and they have to go through a qualification form of, what CRM do you use? How many this or that? It'd be horrifying. So for us, it's really, really great to serve. Hey, if you're from our target account list, Drift knows that, and you can just book a meeting right here with the account owner. You don't have to go through any qualification process, which any marketers out there looking to increase website conversion rates, what a godsend that is.
and for any salespeople out there, the ability to just get notifications for when your target accounts are on the sites or taking action is amazing. We have a library of stories from salespeople that are great from you know, prior to the pandemic, people traveling for work and being on the plane, and a target account hits the site and starts chatting in, and somebody's able to book a meeting while they're flying to a different prospective customer, or people being at events and getting a alert on their cell phone if they still have it on the actual events there, or excuse me, the notifications to book a meeting while they're sitting at a hockey game with their dad. It's amazing what we're able to do, and how we're able to get it in front of the right people and help them out the entire time.
Yeah. And I have a couple questions that have come through here. So one question is, does Drift connect with LinkedIn so that LinkedIn paid ads and interactions are greeted in context? I'll speak really quickly to how we use it with LinkedIn. Our LinkedIn ads, we use Drift conversational landing pages. So the chat is in context. The entire thing is a Drift experience that they get the content through. So yeah, that's how we use it.
Oh, sorry. And then from the sales side, we do have, so, speaking from the sales perspective, somebody who's using the platform in order to communicate with their prospects that are coming through. We do have an integration that allows you to see if somebody is on the site or maybe one of your target accounts, to not only be able to engage with them, but to be able to look them up in LinkedIn right there, and have some of those capabilities on top of being able to track it through UTM parameters and setting up specific playbooks based on where they're coming from.
Yeah. And a couple other questions around gifting. Have we run into issues where the prospect can't accept the gift, or if their company does not allow? And how do we navigate for that? I honestly have not experienced that outside of alcohol specific issues in which we usually do a gift card situation. But maybe we're just not sending big enough gifts that people have to turn down. I know a lot of people do have, there is like a price limit where you're not allowed to accept a gift over a certain amount. So it could be just maybe scaling down the gift. And then one other question around, hey, we're a really small sales team, 2 reps, 2 marketers. How many people do you have on your demand gen team, and how many dedicated to ABM? I think that's a great question, because ABM doesn't have to require a big tool stack. It's really a strategy. And so I think, to speak to that, we started ABM when we had 4 outbound reps and I think 4 marketers. So not that much bigger than you, Jennifer. And I'd be happy to talk to you more after about how I think you could go about it.
Great. And so we can certainly answer any more questions that anybody has, but in the meantime, we do have a couple of things for you. The art of ABM, especially, I believe your name was Jennifer, talking about starting that up, or understanding that a bit more. We do have a free guide here that you're able to download, and we can send as part of the follow-up. But everything from terminology to what you should be targeting, how you can think about creating your ICP, everything we talked about and more is going to be covered in this actual ebook here. And then coming up actually on April 6th, we have an event where you can get your free ticket, but our Rev Growth event. It's a virtual summit where we invite you to come, and everything is focused actually how you need to move beyond ABM. So we talk about ABM, but taking that account-based marketing idea and then moving it to experiences and really focused on the actual personalization of all of it. So a couple of great speakers there from the Drift side of the house, from DC, our CMO Trisha, to our CTO is Leo, and then the CMO from GoFundMe, I believe, is coming, the CMO from Acquia, and even people like the former CMO of Beats by Dre. So definitely a great lineup of people that have kind of taken these actions and put them to work, but have real life experiences as to the success they've seen from them.
Yeah. I do think we're at time. I can't, it's been so much fun, Sam. I think we might have gone over a little bit, but if we did not get to your question in the chat, please reach out to Sam or myself on LinkedIn. We'd be happy to talk. We will follow up with a recording and some of these collateral that we shared. And I'm so glad to have got to do this to you today, Sam.
Yeah, this was great, Mary. It was great to connect. It was really fun to be able to talk with somebody from, who's so involved on the marketing side, and obviously the massive amount of appreciation that salespeople have for marketers that are running these campaigns that are so diligent, but then the level of communication and teamwork it takes in order to actually execute and make these campaigns worthwhile. It's been a lot of fun to walk through this with you.
Yeah, same. All right, everybody. We'll talk soon.
Have a great day.